Hey guys, it's Elliot with Backyard Sports Media, and today we're going to be looking at the biggest winners from the 2025 NFL Draft Combine. Combine is now officially in the books, so we're going to be taking a look at a couple of guys who I think have boosted their stock quite a bit. Some guys who already had really high stocks and boosted it even higher. Some guys who are a little bit under the radar and now are squarely on everyone's radar after their testing at the combines. First guy we're going to take a look at here today is Matthew Golden, one of the fastest 40s this year at the combine. I think the only guy to run faster was Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky, who we will talk about later. And Golden was not the Texas receiver that everybody thought was going to run the super quick 40. Of course, Isaiah Bond came out before the combine and talked about potentially wanting to break the combine record for the 40, said he was going to run in the 4.2s, ended up running a 4.41, I believe, which, in the grand scheme of things, 4.41 is honestly a pretty good time. But when you come out and say that you're going to break the record and do all this and that, and you end up running a 4.41, it makes it look not so good. But Golden certainly had a great combine, measured in at 5'11, 191, 30 and 5/8 inch arms, 9.5 inch hand size. Honestly, measurables are not as bad as I would have expected. Of course, he's not big by any means, but that's not, if you watch him play, that's not what you would have expected. And he doesn't need to be. With how crisp he is route running, and with how good a hands he has, he doesn't need the insane size. I mean, if he had the size, we would be talking about like a top five pick here. Honestly, I really think that if he was maybe 3, 4 inches taller, maybe weighed a little bit more, he would legitimately be a top five pick, because even at the measurables he's at now, he's still going to be, I would say, a guaranteed first round pick at this point, barring something absolutely crazy happening. So, yeah, if for him to be able to run a 4.29 is huge, because like I said, you watch the tape from him at Texas and he showed that he can be a really crisp route runner. He showed he's got hands to play at the NFL level. And so now he's got the 4.29 speed to go with it. Fastest receiver out of all the receivers that ran at the combine. I think this is absolutely huge for them. Like I said, I don't want to say guarantee, but I really, really do feel like he has cemented himself as a first round pick at this point. I would be very shocked to see him fall outside of the first round. Next receiver we're going to talk about is Arkansas's Isaac TeSlaa. TeSlaa measured in at 6'4", 214, 31 and an eighth inch arms, 10-inch hand size, ran a 4.43 40 with a 1.51 10-yard split, which both of those at his size are just ridiculous, especially that 10-yard split. Shows that he is not taking very long to get up to his top speed. 39 and a half inch vert, 10.9 on the broad jump. And you see here 96 athleticism score, which ranks first out of all participating receivers at this year's combine. And one thing I just want to note that I think is really cool, as you can see, he participated in all of the different drills, didn't skip any of them, which is kind of a rarity in today's age. A lot of guys kind of pick and choose and essentially only compete in what they think they're going to do good at, which I get it. I fully understand why they do that, but it is cool to see a guy go out there and participate in all the drills. And obviously he's definitely made himself some money as a result of doing that, has probably skyrocketed up some boards. And based off of his athleticism, I think he could be going from like, potentially undrafted or, fifth, sixth, seventh round pick to now. I would not be shocked to see him maybe go day two, like maybe go round three. I could see that absolutely. And just to give some additional context here to just how athletic he is, this is his RAS, which is relative athletic score. Comes from Kent Lee Platt, which is at MathBomb on Twitter. Super cool Twitter account. I highly recommend you guys give him a follow. I will try to link him in the description so you guys can go check him out. And he essentially, what he does is takes all the measurables for a certain prospect and essentially compares them to all previous prospects that have participated at the combine since 1987 and ranks them 1 through 10, or kind of grades them 1 through 10, 1 being the least athletic, 10 being the most athletic. And it's super cool. Like, it's just super cool information that he's putting out there. And you can see Isaac TeSlaa here, 9.97 out of 10, which ranks 11th all time. That's just, it's hard to even wrap your head around that. We're talking about like the most athletic receivers of all time, Terrell Owens and Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, and Isaac TeSlaa ranks 11th out of all receivers that are being calculated here. So from 1987 to 2025. That's just insane to think about. Like I said, I think Isaac TeSlaa will end up probably being a day two pick just based off of the pure athleticism at this point. The tape is not anything crazy, but when a guy's this athletic, teams don't just let that slide. He's going to get drafted probably higher than maybe what he should based off of purely tape, but that's how the NFL works. And a guy that's this athletic, teams love the potential that goes with that. So I would not be shocked to see him go maybe round 3. Next up is Missouri's Armand Membu, measured in at 6'4", 332, with 33.5-inch arms, 9 3/4 hand size. And that arm length is really important, passes the 33-inch threshold that most teams have for an offensive tackle. Essentially, what that means is if a guy measures in at less than 33 inches, then he is likely not going to be considered a tackle. Even if he played tackle in college, teams are going to draft him and move him to guard or center, kind of like what we're seeing with Will Campbell right now, measured in at slightly less than 33-inch arms. But Will Campbell could end up being an exception to that rule. But, historically, if you are under 33-inch arms, you are most likely going to play on the interior in the NFL. That's just the way the NFL works. But Armand Membu measured above 33, so could play tackle at the next level. Of course, being 6'4" would be one of the shorter tackles in the league, but height, it doesn't really matter for tackles. Like, you might think that it does, but it's really just the arm length that accompanies it is what's more important. The height itself is really not that important. So if you're 6'4", maybe a little shorter for a tackle, but if you've got the arm length, which he does, then that's perfectly fine. That's really the more important aspect. Being able to keep those DNs at bay with longer arms, that is what teams are looking for. They don't really actually care about your height. They just care about your arm length. And on the 40, ran a 4.91, which 40s for an offensive lineman, not super important, but still cool to see a guy run this fast at that size. I mean, that was an insanely fast 40 for a guy that's 330 pounds, and also maybe the loudest 40-yard dash I've ever seen or heard, I should say. If you didn't watch it, go pull up the video on Twitter or something and find it. It was pretty hilarious. He was like grunting and like giving out primal screams every 10 yards on his 40-yard dash. It was pretty hysterical, honestly. But the more important one from that is the 10-yard split at 174, which is great for an offensive lineman. That's what you're looking for. That 10-yard split, really important because that shows more, realistic, measurements of, hey, this is what this guy is going to run whenever he's like pulling, getting him out on a screen play, especially for a tackle, or if it's a guard, getting him out on a toss, anything like that. That 10-yard split is going to be more important for that than the 40-yard dash. But of course, everybody loves a good 40-yard dash, so it was cool to see him run a sub 5. 9.7 on the broad, 34-inch vert. And I will show you guys his RAS real quick as well. 9.82 out of 10. Really, just the height was the only thing dragging him down. As you can see, everything else is above a 9. His 40, 10, 20, and 10, vertical and broad, and of course his weight are all ranking extremely highly. His arm length is fine, his hand size was good, like everything ranked highly. It was just his height, which, like I said earlier, height's really not that big of a deal. It's more so the arm length. So Membu, after this combine performance, honestly has a strong argument to be the top tackle off the board. I'm interested to see if it's going to be him or, I guess Will Campbell, if you want to consider him a tackle, could also go ahead. I don't know if Kelvin Banks would be in that conversation anymore. It's going to be, I think honestly, Membu might have this thing locked up. It might just be a case of how high is he going to go? Could he go to the Patriots at 4? Could he go, I mean, maybe Jacksonville at 5? Not a fit I've seen very often, but you never know. He could honestly go to any number of teams because every team needs offensive line. They're always going to need it. So be interesting to see where he falls. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to Jared Wilson before hopping over to the defensive side of the ball. Measured in at 6'3", 310, 32 and 3/8 inch arms, 10 3/4 hand size, and ran the fastest 40 out of all offensive linemen at a 4.84 with a 1.72 10-yard split, which is pretty impressive because normally if a guy's running that quick as an offensive lineman, he's weighing in at 290 or 295, but Wilson weighed in at 310, so made that really impressive. Obviously, it's why you see the 98 athleticism score, ranked highest out of all offensive linemen and probably ranked pretty high all time. I'd be interested to see where he does rank. But Wilson came into the combine as a projected day 2 pick, second or third round, fully cemented himself as that. I would be absolutely shocked if he got past day 2 at this point. Probably has now cemented himself as a second round pick rather than, even falling into the third round at this point. Hopping over to the defensive side of the ball, we have Kentucky's Maxwell Harrison ran the fastest 40 at this year's combine at a 4.28, measured in at 5'11. 183 pounds, 31-inch arms, 8 3/4 inch hands. Honestly, I think the measurable's not too bad for a guy that's running as fast as he is. I think 5'11", of course, nowadays is a little shorter for a corner, but honestly, it's still very much playable. And that's kind of even crazy to say because 10 years ago, the average corner was like 5'8", 5'9", and now it feels like the average corner is like 6'1" or 6'2", but 5'11" is still very much manageable. Even on the boundary, it's still very doable, especially with his speed, and he's got the arm length to be able to get up and press if he needs to as well. So the 4.28, like I said, very, very impressive. I think a lot of people were expecting him to test well. I don't know that anybody expected him to go out there and run the fastest 40, though. I think most people were expecting Isaiah Bond from Texas to get that. So for him to go out there and do that, I think he's boosted his stock quite a bit. Also threw in a nice 39.5-inch vert, 10.9 on the broad jump. So Maxwell Harrison, I think coming into the combine, probably looked at his, mid second round pick, maybe even like late second round pick. But honestly, now I do probably view him as a first round pick. I think, if I was a GM personally, I don't know if I would or not, but I just know how teams love to draft. It's athleticism, 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 especially at the corner position. And I would not be shocked if he ends up going in the first round. I had him going to the Steelers in my most recent mock draft. I think that would make a ton of sense. I think the Packers would make a ton of sense. I think Commanders, Bills, there's several teams that are in that 20 to 32 range, back end of the first round, I think would make a ton of sense. And I think Hairston has made himself a lot of money this past weekend. Next up is one of my personal favorite prospects from this year's draft class. It's Iowa State's Darian Porter, measured in at 6'3", 195, 33 and an eighth inch arms, 9-inch hands. Ran a 4.3 40-yard dash. I mean, just otherworldly. 10-yard split of a 1.49. Okay vertical jump. That's probably the only knock I'll say is maybe the vert, but it's honestly not horrible. 10-11 broad is really good though. 6.71 on the 3 cone and 4.04 20-yard shuttle. I mean, running a 4.3 flat at 6'3", 200 pounds is just ridiculous. Also, 33-inch arms is insane. I mean, I could tell just watching him that he was very lanky, but I mean he's absolutely going to be able to play at the next level. He's going to be able to stick with even the more, lanky receivers in the NFL. I think this is a guy, like I said, who I'm really excited by, one of my favorite prospects. And honestly, one of the most reassuring things for me was honestly not the measurables, not him running an insane 40. It was honestly watching the on the field drills because when you have a corner that's this tall, that long of arms, your biggest concern is fluidity. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's the most fluid corner in the draft. He's not, but he for his size, he's very fluid. Flips the hips really well. I thought he looked really good in the on the field drills. Like I said, more fluid than I would have expected for a guy who's 6'3" and 33-inch arms. Like, I did not expect that at all. And like I said, you add in the insane 4.3 speed, just absolutely ridiculous. We'll take a look at his RAS here real quick. 9.99 unofficial RAS, ranks fourth out of all corners since 1987. The only slight knock, as you can see, the weight, and as I mentioned, the vert. I thought the vertical was, maybe a little bit mild, but honestly, it's not bad. It's really not. It's not anything that you're just going to like turn your nose up at completely. It's just kind of average. And he was, like I said, otherworldly in basically every other category. So this is a guy who I really don't know how NFL teams are going to view him. I have no idea if he could like be a first round pick. I mocked him in the first round in my last mock. I would take him in the first round, back end of the first round, but I don't know if NFL teams will or not. But I think absolutely would be a second round pick, probably early second round. So I'm really excited to see kind of where he lands, what team takes a chance on him maybe, and what spot that might be in. Next up is one of the most interesting prospects at the combine this past weekend. It's Shamar Stewart, measured in at 6'5", 267, 34 and an eighth inch arms, and 9 and 5/8 hand size. Ran a 4.59 40, 1.58 10-yard split, 40-inch vertical jump, and a 10.11 broad jump. I mean, just ridiculous measurables on all three for a guy who's 267 pounds. And reason I said he was maybe the most interesting is just the fact that at Texas A&M, I believe he was listed at 290. and then showed up to the Senior Bowl at 280. So not a huge variance there. Like that's okay. That's not anything too crazy. But then shows up to the combine at 267. And so, when he was at Texas A&M, everybody's thinking, is this going to be like a kind of a flex guy, like move inside and play D tackle, move outside and play D end? Like, is he going to move around a little bit? Like I said, probably play like D end on like first and second down, and then maybe move him inside on obvious passing downs. But now coming into the combine, 267, running a 4.59. I think this is squarely like a 4.3 edge rusher. I think that is without a doubt at this point. I think we can now start to understand what scheme he's going to be playing in and maybe what teams are going to start looking at drafting him. I honestly do not know exactly how high he's going to go because this is a guy that just had one of the best combines of any DN prospect. As you can see, RAS of 9.99, just like Darian Porter we looked at previously. Shamar Stewart ranks third of all DN prospects from 1987 to 2025. The only slight knock being his weight, which is kind of crazy because, 267 is not light. That's not a guy you can just move around. That's going to be one of the bigger DNs in this league. So it's going to be really interesting to see where he ends up going. I think, like I said, squarely a 4-3 D end at this point. I don't see him fitting into a 3-4 scheme. So I think we can rule out those teams. But honestly, I could see him maybe going as high as like the Panthers at 8 or the Saints at 9. I could absolutely see both of those. So it'd be really interesting to see what happens with him come April. Next D end we will be looking at is James Pierce Jr. from the University of Tennessee, measured in at 6'5, 245, 32 and 3/4 inch arms and 10-inch hands. Ran a 4.47 which is pretty comfortably the fastest out of all D linemen. A 1.56 10-yard split. A pretty pedestrian 31-inch vertical jump, but probably not like a huge deal. Does come into play a little bit for like a D lineman when, jumping up to bat balls down and things, but I don't think that's probably a deal breaker from stopping a team from drafting him, but we'll see. And then a 10.3 on the broad jump, very impressive as well. Looking at his RAS, came in at a 9.35 out of 10. So even with the weight and the vertical jump dragging it down quite a bit, it's still at a 9.35 just because of how impressive the height and the 40 and the broad were. I mean, I don't know where James Pierce Jr. ends up exactly. I kind of played around with him getting drafted super high in my last mock draft, going at 6 to the Raiders. Probably not the most realistic scenario, but honestly, you never know. I think with a guy like James Pierce Jr., is he the most athletic of all time? No, but he's supremely athletic, and it matches the production that he had in college. I think when you can marry the production and the athleticism, that's when you start talking about guys going in the top 15, top 10, top 5. Like James Pierce Jr. had supreme production at Tennessee and now was able to go out there and put out a really, really good combine performance. So I think the sky's the limit. Honestly, I could see him maybe even sneaking into the top 5. Some people might think that's crazy, but I really think it's a possibility. This is a guy we were talking about as a likely number 1 pick before the season started, and then kind of got off to a slow start and but picked it up towards the end of the season. But people want to kind of ignore that and they just want to focus on, oh, he had a slow start. He's no longer a top 5 prospect in this class. Maybe he's not, but I'm just saying, don't count him out. The dude's got the production and he's got the athleticism. There's really not much more you can ask for a prospect. So I don't know where he ends up, but I think he'll go higher than maybe what some people think. Before we move on from the D lineman, wanted to give a quick shout out to my guy CJ West. Go Hoosiers, measured in at 6'1, 316, 31 and a half inch arms, 9 and 3/4 inch hand size, and ran a 4.95 and a 1.73 10-yard split. So for a guy that size coming in at sub 5, super impressive. Probably looks to be kind of a Puna Ford type at the next level, a run stuffer. But when you show that type of athleticism, you show, a little bit of potential for maybe being able to rush the passer. Teams are going to love that. If you're coming in at 6'1, obviously that's not ideal. But like I said, Puna Ford's been able to carve out a really successful career as a D tackle at 5'11. So being 2 inches taller than that and running a sub 540, I think CJ West could be a guy, probably gets drafted in 4th or 5th round, but I think he could carve out a nice little role for himself if he gets into the right fit. Another one of my favorite prospects in this class, it's Alabama's Jahad Campbell. Came in at 6'3", 235, 32.5 inch arms, 10.5 inch hand size. Don't love him weighing in at 235, but I do get it. Of course, a lot of these guys are slimming down prior to the combine just to try to run the fastest 40 they can, jump as high as they possibly can in the vert and the broad jump, look good in the on the field drills, things like that. They're not having to use their weight in pads and move people around. There's no need for them to beef up. Of course, they usually will do that before the Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, and then shed that down for the combine so that they can try to, like I said, run and jump as fast as they possibly can. But I think his playing weight is probably a little bit closer to like a 240, 245, hopefully. But honestly, it'd be interesting to see if any team considers him an edge rusher at all, or if they look at him strictly as an off ball linebacker. Was an edge recruit coming out of high school, then started playing off ball at Alabama. I mean, he is one of my favorite linebackers in this class. He's probably my most favorite linebacker in this class. Love Jahad Campbell. I love the potential to be able to play off the ball. And even being as big as he is, he's pretty rangy. I really feel like he can play sideline to sideline. And of course, being as big as he is and having that edge rush background, able to rush the passer from the edge, able to blitz from his off ball linebacker spot. I really love him as a prospect. Threw in a 4.52 40-yard dash, 1.53 10-yard split, and a 10.7 broad jump as well. I believe that came out to be 9.85 RAS. Looked pretty good. Didn't jump in the vertical. Not sure exactly why he did that. I don't know if he was expecting to not do well in the vert or what he was thinking there. Didn't do agility testing either. Not super surprised by the agility. Was a little bit surprised by the vertical, but obviously he probably just thought he wasn't going to test well, so he just chose not to do it. But yeah, I mean, the weight does drag him down just a little bit, but like I said, I think his playing weight's probably more like 245 ish, maybe 240. But I really, really like Jahad Campbell. Interested to see where he goes come April. Last but most certainly not least, it is South Carolina's Nick Emmanwori, measured in at 6'3, 220, 32.5 inch arms, 9-inch hands. Ran a 4.38 with a 1.49 10-yard split. 43-inch vertical jump, 11.6 on the broad jump, and threw in a calm little 20 reps on the bench press as well. I mean, I mean, you can't understate how impressive this is. A 4.38 at 220 with getting to 10 yards in 1.49 seconds is insane. Showing that, I mean, he's getting to his speed, top speed, very quickly. Super impressive. A 43-inch vertical jump. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, that's like, you don't generally see that from NFL players. I mean, that's like NBA level vertical jump. 11.6 broad is also absurd. I can't remember. Byron Jones, I know, has the record. I can't remember what his was, but I'm pretty sure 11.6 is not far off of it. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous. Taking a look at his RAS, he is a perfect 10 out of 10. He is the most athletic safety prospect of all time. And I believe also Kentley Platt ranked him up against a couple of other positions just to see like how he would rank as a corner, how he would rank as a linebacker, and how he would rank as a couple other positions. He was as a receiver, I think he even put in there. He was essentially a perfect 10 at every position except for a linebacker, and that's just because the weight was dragging him down quite a bit on linebacker, but because he's only 220, but I said only 220. I mean, that's huge for a safety. But I mean, just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, just 43. I just can't get over it. 43-inch vert, 4.38 40. I mean, just absolutely insane. Emmanwori went from, I think, probably second or third safety behind Malachi Starks to, I really think, could be top safety in this class. And don't get it twisted. Like, this is not just a purely athletic guy either. Like, you put on the tape, this guy can just play safety. Like, this guy can sit back and play in a deep third. This guy can run with some vertical routes. Like, he's not just, oh, this is a big, fast guy. Let's stick him back there and see what happens. Like, this is a guy who can actually, like, play safety and play it at a high level. So that's why, like, I mocked him to the Colts at 14. I think that's a real possibility, honestly. I think Dolphins at 13, like, who knows? I really don't even know how high he's going to get. I think there probably is a ceiling for how high he will get drafted just because safety is not the most valuable position out there. It's kind of like running back offensively. It's probably not going to get drafted like top 5, but I mean, if it was a little bit more valuable position, he would be because this is the best safety prospect you're going to see from an athletic standpoint in a long time. And you put on the tape, and the tape's probably not as good as Malachi Starks, but Eman Mori is double the athlete that Starks is with tape that I think is close. So, I mean, I really think Eman Mori could be the top safety off the board after, prior to the combine, we were not talking about anybody but Starks being the top safety now. And don't get me wrong, I really like Starks. Not a knock against Starks. I just want to highlight how good Eman Warri's combine was and how much he has boosted up draft boards. Really, really think we could see him go top 15. Will be really interesting to see what ends up happening there. So, all right, that's been the top risers, biggest winners from the 2025 NFL Combine. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed. Drop some more in the comments that you guys think I missed. If you guys have any thoughts or opinions on this, let me know. We can have some discussion in the comments. If you guys like the video, drop a like, hit the subscribe button for me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.